If someone you know says they have anxiety, please take them seriously. Anxiety. About a third of the American population suffer from an anxiety disorder at some point in their lives. In fact, these disorders are among the most common mental illnesses, with over 40 million Americans being affected every single year. But here's a harsh reality. Even today, mental illness is not taken as seriously as physical illness. So there are still a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings that our society just can't seem to shake. So today, we're going to take a look at why anxiety is one of the most serious public health crises in America. And yes, we'll even talk about some common anxiety myths, because there are way too many of them out there. So let's be clear. Vast bodies of research show that anxiety disorders are not simple inconveniences. In fact, here are just some of the disorders that millions of Americans are plagued with. Though these disorders are highly treatable, only 36.9% of those suffering receive treatment. And we're not even going to get into the co-occurrence of anxiety in the following disorders. Even for the highest functioning among us, anxiety disorders can and do have drastic effects on people's lives. So let's take a moment to dispel some of these viciously persistent myths that people have all too often lain at the feet of those suffering from something they have no control over. Myth number 1. Anxious people should just stop worrying so much. Everybody worries, but people who suffer from anxiety disorders have worries that are disproportionately severe, to the point that they interfere with normal life. These fears are not a result of weakness or an inability to cope. They are the effects of observable physiological differences in the brain. Scientists actually believe that anxiety disorders have an evolutionary basis. Long ago, when people lived in small tribal societies, anxiety would have been very useful in, say, motivating people to find food or preventing them from frequenting places known to be dangerous. In modern society, the stakes are usually lower, but those physiological reactions remain. Thus, people with anxiety disorders literally can't just stop worrying. That's why it's called a disorder. Myth number 2. Anxiety isn't an illness. This one is actually true, because anxiety is several illnesses combined. There are many types of anxiety disorders listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, but any disorder that is included in the DSM is definitely an illness. Even though mental illness often isn't taken as seriously as physical illness, the symptoms of anxiety are out of the sufferer's control and can be just as debilitating. And let us not forget that the brain, too, is a body part, and therefore must also be taken care of just as any other part of the body would be if it were dysfunctional, wounded, or broken. Myth number 3. It's easy to spot a person with anxiety. Think about it. If you meet someone who isn't wearing glasses, that doesn't mean they have 20/20 vision. Some anxiety sufferers are able to appear entirely well-adjusted on the outside, despite the absolute meltdowns that could potentially be happening on the inside. In fact, someone afflicted with social anxiety might be desperately trying to hide their anxiety because they get serious anxiety about whether other people think they have anxiety. And because there are so many types of anxiety, we have to imagine a spectrum where some people may find their lives severely impacted, while others are able to go about their normal routine as if everything is fine. But again, that doesn't mean they'll be okay if they just keep pushing on. Myth number 4. Social anxiety is just like being shy. Social anxiety disorder is more like typical social nervousness on steroids. The stress involved with being around people is often too much to handle. That may include things like eye contact or even casual small talk. A person with social anxiety disorder may also have an overwhelming fear of being the center of attention and can suffer from dizziness, rapid heartbeat, or out-of-body experiences. What's more, if they are forced to endure a moment in the spotlight, they may spend weeks obsessing over how they acted and what others think of them. Myth number 5. Anxiety can be cured by healthy diet and exercise. Diet and exercise can effectively reduce normal stress by releasing endorphins in the brain. But reducing stress does not directly address an anxiety disorder. While exercise and healthy eating might help decrease the intensity or frequency of anxiety symptoms, it is in no way an actual cure. It's also important to remember that, for some, diet and exercise might become the focus of obsessive thoughts, which could potentially lead to dangerous eating disorders. Continuing to believe these myths or to make assumptions about another person's mental health will only perpetuate this vicious cycle of uncontrollable fear. People who are or feel like they might be afflicted with an anxiety disorder should always consult a professional if they can. And if you have a friend who suffers from any sort of mental illness, no matter how minuscule it may appear, try not to forget how much they need your love and support, and keep reminding yourself that they might not be capable of asking for help.